You've been active in anti-war movements since the Vietnam War. And when I think back on the anti-war movement that sprang up after Afghanistan, and particularly in the lead up to the Iraq War, I should admit I myself was a young, if not entirely effective or strategic protester during that time period. And looking back on it, if we look at the anti-war movement at that time and ask, did it stop the war or even slow the war or the two wars? The answer, of course, is no. But I'm wondering if if you think that there's something we can take away from the anti-war movement of that time period, or what you think future anti-war movements can learn from the time period leading up to Afghanistan and Iraq.
First thing they should learn is how effective they were. The common view is we failed. It's
true.
You look at the plans, they weren't carried out. We've just learned a couple of days ago from high-level German sources that the Bush administration was apparently planning the use of nuclear weapons in Afghanistan. They couldn't do that. US population wouldn't tolerate it. The Iraq War also had something new in the history of imperialism. There were massive protests, which you participated in, before the war was officially launched. In fact, the war had been going on for a long time. Back to Clinton had been bombing Iraq, but the war was officially launched in March 2003. The day before, I remember my own classes at MIT. The students in the class demanded that the class be canceled so that we could all participate in the mass demonstrations before the war was officially declared. It's never happened in the history of imperialism. That was all over the place. Well, what happened in Iraq was bad enough. Could have been a lot worse. If the government if Rumsfeld, Cheney, the rest of them were unleashed, we don't know what would have happened. But they were constrained by public opposition on the ground. That's happened over and over. Doesn't get written about. It's the wrong story, but it's the story we should recognize. So I don't think the anti-war movement was ineffective. I think it was very effective. It's to go back to Samuel Moyn this morning, it's the real factor that led to the very limited reduction in violence and terror and destruction that we see. And the lesson is continue it harder. Take the threat of nuclear weapons. It's a very serious threat, mounting significantly under Trump. Biden, so far at least, is pursuing the same policies. Well, let's look back. Early 1980s, there were huge public demonstrations, probably the biggest in American history, condemning the emplacement of short distance missiles in Western Germany, reach Moscow with a 10-minute flight time, greatly increasing the threat of war, Pershing missiles. Similar protests in Europe, enormous protests. Well, that had an effect. It led Reagan to accept Gorbachev's offers for a for elimination of for establishing the INF Treaty, intermediate range missiles. That was an enormous step towards peace. It reduced significantly threats that could have easily led to nuclear war. Well, Trump dismantled the treaty, part of his general wrecking ball, destroying everything that has anything of value, destroyed the INF Treaty, most of the rest of the arms control regime. And immediately, this was, I think, August 2019, picked the anniversary of Hiroshima Day to announce it, eliminate the INF Treaty, and immediately launch missiles, which violate the treaty, saying to the Russians, come on, boys, join us. We can have fun and create new, more destructive missiles, which will destroy everything. It'll really be fun, you know. It's the demonstrations of the early 80s that put some kind of limit on this. That's lessons too. They can take place now. Stop the race to disaster that's going on there. Same with climate destruction. Pressure from the population, young people mostly, has pressured Biden to put on paper programs that are not too bad, not enough, but much better than anything that appeared before on paper. Okay. Now take a look at what happens. Last week, the IPCC released its latest report. Very grim report, much worse than anything before. Didn't get anywhere near adequate coverage here, but it was very serious. That was on Monday. And what happened on Tuesday? On Tuesday, Biden issued an appeal to OPEC, the oil cartel, to increase production of oil because he wants gas prices to decline in the United States to improve his electoral prospects. So that's what happened on Monday and Tuesday. So nice things on paper, but there are things that happen in the world. Well, that's why activism on the ground makes a difference. Sunrise Movement activists took over Nancy Pelosi's office, got support from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, so they didn't just get thrown out. That led to an actual resolution in Congress. It's on the floor. Ocasio-Cortez and Ed Markey of Massachusetts have a resolution which has a very sensible program which would deal effectively with the severe threat of global destruction through environmental destruction. It's a resolution, but you have to get beyond a resolution to a legislation. That's going to take a lot of work. Republicans, of course, will be 100% opposed. Their commitment at this point is slavishly serve the corporate sector and shine Trump's boots so that the crowds he's organized don't go after you. That's the Republican Party. Doesn't matter what happens to the country or the world. 100%, no deviation. Then there's a couple of Democrats who can block anything. We know it. We know who they are. Well, that means work.
If you like this video from The Jacobin Show, please hit like and subscribe and share with your friends. Thanks.